It's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is insure. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first and most common way to hear the verb insure used is to mean to arrange for compensation in the event of damage or loss to either property or injury to someone or even the death of someone. And this compensation is in exchange for regular payments, either to a company or a government agency. So with this definition, I hope you're starting to think of a related word, and that related word is insurance, right? And we'll talk more about what that noun means a little later. But right now, I think it's important to note there are all kinds of types of insurance, right? So you might be thinking of your car or automobile, right? There's insurance for that, and even different types of insurance, right? There's collision, there are medical payments in the event of an accident. People buy insurance for their homes. We have medical insurance. There's something called life insurance, and so that's for uh, that payment if someone were to pass away. Okay, so this particular verb, insure, is all about that act of arranging compensation. Okay, so this really connects to the second definition. So sometimes the verb insure is used to mean providing insurance coverage. Also, another common way to hear that verb used. The third way you might hear insure used is to mean to secure or protect someone against something else. Okay? So with this third definition, it's a little broader. So it's not like just about money, I would say, in the event of something bad. But this is, again, sort of like protection. Um, some people might say we wear bicycle helmets to ensure uh, ourselves against serious head injuries, right? So as we're riding our bikes, this is going to help protect us. You should know that insure is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, you're going to drop the E and then add ing to form insuring. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding D since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, insure, ends in a voiced R sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. It should sound like this: insured, insured. Okay. Now let's take a moment to look at some phrasal verbs with insure. And we've started to kind of touch on this first one, to insure against. Again, means we're securing or protecting someone. And then after that preposition against, right, is sort of like the bad thing or the bad event, right? What are we trying to protect ourselves from? So you can see that in the example here. Does this policy insure us against floods? Okay. So this might be a question someone asks as they're considering what type of insurance to get. And so they want to know, are we protected in case of this bad thing, the flood? Okay. Another phrasal verb you might hear is insure with. This means we are buying insurance, either from a person or maybe from a company. So an example of this: we insure our car with Progressive. This is the name of an insurance company. You could insert any number of companies or insurance agencies here. This is just meant to be an example, not an endorsement. Okay. Now, all this week, we're doing some practice with active and passive voice. So in each video, I want to do just a quick review of what that is. In most of my videos, my example sentences are in the active voice, and that's what you're more commonly going to hear people say and what you're going to see as you're reading. So in an active voice sentence, our general structure is we have our subject, and then we have our verb, and then our object, so that person or thing receiving the action. In these sentences, it's very clear who is responsible for doing the action. You can see this in my two examples on the screen. Tim cleans the house each week. So here in the first example, Tim is responsible for the action of cleaning. And then in the second sentence, Leslie writes notes. Okay, so here, Leslie is responsible for the action of writing. But sentences in the passive voice instead begin with the object or the person or the thing that is acted on, that receives the action. Okay? So sometimes in these sentences, you aren't going to know who is responsible. It just might not be included, and that's okay. Or if that person is included, it's going to be at the end of the sentence after the preposition by. So I took my first two active voice examples and changed them to passive voice. You can see it in the house is cleaned, right? Or the house is cleaned by Tim. Or I could say notes are written, or notes are written by Leslie. Okay? So each of these sentences are going to have the same meaning, an active or passive voice. Just a kind of a different way to share or to communicate. In each of my videos, I talk a little bit about why we might use this passive voice. I'm going to skip over, or I'll encourage you pause if you want to read my reasons 1, 2, 3, or 4 there. But I'm also going to note, and you're going to see this in some of my examples here in just a moment, passive voice sometimes gets used in legal writing and legal documents. It doesn't always make things very clear, and that can be frustrating to people. But my passive voice examples I have for us today are all things I've taken from real examples, different sort of disclaimers that you might see. Okay, so today we're going to focus on comparing the active voice in the simple present to the passive voice simple present. And you might remember we're using the simple present to talk about habits and routines. But with our verb of the day, insure, it's more common, I think, that you will hear this describing facts or factual statements. Okay, that's what we'll sort of focus on here. Okay, in the simple present, we need to pay attention to our subject. Okay, so in the active voice, if our subject is singular, so she, he, or it, specifically the third person singular, we need to add an S to the end of our base verb. Okay? If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we just use the base verb. Okay? You can see that in my example. The government insures bank accounts for up to $250,000 per depositor per bank. Okay? This is a factual statement in the United States. Okay? So we have this federal insurance program to help protect and encourage people to save money. Okay, so this is how the rule exists, right? Depositor means person who's putting money into a bank, who's depositing the money. Okay, now how I've actually seen the sentences written on various bank websites and other documents is in the passive voice. And to do this, we need to pay attention to our object and whether that object is singular or plural. Okay, so here my object is bank accounts. Okay, so I've got that S there. That means I'm going to use are. So I'm using a present form of be to make my passive voice. If I was just talking about one bank account, I would use is here. Okay, so I've got a present form of be, and then I've got the participle form of the verb. So my example sentence, again, same meaning. Bank accounts are insured for up to $250,000 per depositor per bank. Okay? So again, both of these sentences are communicating the same idea. It's just a different way to present the information. Now let's look at the negative. Okay? In the active voice, um, again, we need to pay attention to what our subject is. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, our structure is going to be do, not, and then the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we use does not and then the base verb. Okay, so in the negative here, FDIC, this is the insurance program that protects our bank accounts. So I have another factual statement here. The FDIC does not insure stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. Okay, so there is no insurance for that. There's no protection. Okay? But again, I think you're more commonly to see statements in the passive voice stating this fact. Okay? So our structure here is, again, to pay attention to what our subject is. Is it singular? Is it plural? Then use a present form of be, then not, and then the participle form of the verb. Here it is in passive voice. Stocks, bonds, and mutual funds are not insured. Now let's look at making yes or no questions. In the active voice, we start with do or does, whichever form matches our subject, and that subject comes next, then the base verb. So notice in the negative and our yes or no question, I am not adding an S to the end of the verb. I'm only doing that in the affirmative. So another example, does the company insure against cryptocurrency losses? Okay. So again, someone might be asking about the type of coverage provided. Right? Now, in the passive voice, we're going to start with our present form of be. Whichever form matches the object, that comes next. And then we have our participle form of the verb. So I could also say, are cryptocurrency losses insured? Now, if I'm having a conversation with someone, perhaps they're an insurance agent, right? That's their line of work, their business. It might be clear that of course, I'm talking about you, your company, your policies, right? And so I might not need to sort of use active voice and state that subject clearly. Another reason you might hear or see the passive voice being used. It's already sort of understood who's responsible for the action. Now, let's take a moment to look at some related words. I already sort of previewed our first word. It's the noun insurance. And just like our verb insure, this noun can have a few different meanings. So the first meaning would be to refer to money that's being paid as a guarantee of compensation should there be some sort of loss, damage, an illness, or death at some point in the future, and you're doing that in return for a payment of a premium. So that's kind of like a regular payment to provide that guarantee. So an example of this might be, do you have renter's insurance? Okay. A second way we can refer to the noun insurance is just to speak about the money that is being paid out as compensation under a policy. Right? So perhaps after a natural disaster, right? Let's say something bad happens in your community, maybe it's a tornado, a hurricane, a fire, something else. And you report this to your insurance company, you want them to fix whatever happened to your home. Someone might ask you later, have you collected the insurance yet? Right? So they want to know, have you received money from the insurance company to make those repairs? A third way the noun insurance gets used is to talk about the money you pay for insurance. I know this can be kind of confusing. It really sort of depends on the context or the other words in our sentence. So our last example here, your auto insurance is going to increase after that accident. So here we're talking about the premium, the amount someone pays to have that protection. That is going to increase. The next related word you might hear is insurer. This is a noun. It's referring to either a person or a company that provides insurance. So this is a rather technical word for this field, but they underwrite the risk. So they're the ones guaranteeing that compensation should something bad happen in the future. And they're doing that because you are making some sort of monthly or maybe quarterly payment to provide that protection. So an example here. Texas auto insurers are planning big rate hikes in 2022. Saw this sentence as a bit of a headline recently, and I thought it illustrated what that meant. So here it's referring to all the companies that provide auto insurance in the state of Texas. Another related word you might hear is the adjective insurable. So this just means something is able to be insured. An example here, are homes near that river insurable? So in some communities, they experience a lot of flooding, and so certain areas they might say, "Oh, I'm not going to insure this because I know it's going to flood. I know there's going to be damage. I don't want to have to keep paying out for it." So in some places, a home or a piece of land might not be able to be insured. Another related adjective you might hear is uninsured. Okay, so you can see that prefix un. I hope you're thinking that means not, right? So uninsured means someone is not covered by insurance. An example here. The accident was caused by an uninsured driver. And in all 50 states here in the United States, drivers are required to have a certain level of minimum coverage in case of an accident. We know that there is a high degree of likelihood of auto accidents. And so that's a bit why this rule exists. But still, some people choose to drive without having insurance. If you're ever pulled over for that, you will likely get a ticket, have to pay a fine because you are driving without insurance. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.